close.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris, for the setup. On the Zoom call, can all of the one of you hear me well?
We're up to 3.
We're up to 3. Okay, can all 3 folks hear me okay?
Yeah. Keith and Kevin said yes.
Excellent. We're only on one Kevin. He's going to need to
It's a
drive.
Kevin H, which is even.
That's freaky.
Kevin, we haven't seen you in person in a while, man. Look,
I'm on the Zoom though.
They're typing. They're talking.
Oh,
yeah. So identity crisis. I don't know.
Well, welcome all the Kevins. Okay, so there's a good chance that I'm going to say a lot of things you already understand, you already know. My goal here is that I've framed things in a way that help you understand why we've ended up where we are and understood how Amazon has responded to each of these changes that we've gone through. So to start things off, there we go. I'm going to start with the timeline. All my timelines and all of my presentations start with the Big Bang. So I'm going to take you through a timeline of sort of generative AI, LLMs, and the advance of the myriad of technologies that fill this ecosystem now. Not meaning to be vendor specific, so I'm just going to talk about the major advances. Some will be things AWS did, many will be things AWS had nothing to do with. So the LLM era, the modern LLM era, happened when I was at Google. I didn't have anything to do with it. I wasn't even the right side of the country. But BERT was released. So BERT, bidirectional encoder representations from transformers, was kind of the first modern LLM we had. It was, for the most part, a unidirectional model. So what it could do is it could encode things well. It could take a bunch of inputs and give a limited output. Not great for creating a sonnet, but for summarizing documents, really, really good. And this was sort of revolutionary, that you could layer transformers on top of each other to mimic, neural networks in human thought. So this really started the ball rolling. It took a little bit before the massive sea change event, which was in November of 22, when ChatGPT was released. Now, the GPT model series had been under development from OpenAI. What really cracked the nut open here was that an interface was provided for the regular human. So how many people have used ChatGPT? Okay, so everybody has seen it. This was the first time a human was given an interface to talk to an LLM. And it was sort of mind-blowing the first time you tried it, right? It mimics intelligence. It's not intelligence. I mean, for those who aren't in the weeds, it's all matrix math. It's all matrix multiplication. Even when it's words, it is encoded into floating point numbers, in matrices, in vectors, really. And when you ask it to, answer a question for you, you ask it to write a recipe or give you song lyrics, it's guessing the next token. It's next token prediction when it's using text in this way. So it can mimic intelligence, and when people got their hands on it, they had the ability to interact with the entire training corpus of knowledge that had been fed in during the training of the model. That's all it could give you. It was limited in scope to what it had in the training corpus, and it could predict the next tokens that made sense based on what your input, your questions were. And everybody started using it. And, everybody started cheating on their homework. Everybody used it to generate their own essays and resumes, as we were talking about earlier. So it sort of exploded everywhere. And this technically happened before. I put it afterwards for a reason. Has anybody here messed with LangChain? Okay, so you guys got off easy. So initially, LangChain was the first open source library. I think they were open source when they released it. Yeah. That was made GA for developers. Why this was important was that all of these really cool use cases, a chatbot use case, a knowledge-based use case, these were abstracted away by LangChain. So now instead of writing this code yourself, you're just going through and using the APIs provided by them to say, okay, I'm going to create a chatbot, use their chatbot interface. So just as the ChatGPT release democratized access to an LLM, LangChain democratized the developer's ability to build around an LLM. And that was a pretty substantial change. And in 2023, which is when I started at AWS, that was the year of the chatbot. Chatbots appeared everywhere on the planet. They mostly sucked. They still suck, mostly. It's a goal to intercept humans on the way to getting what they want, right? But it was a way for humans to interact and potentially access some knowledge. And when they wanted knowledge that wasn't available in that original training corpus, that original batch of data that was fed into the model during the training process. We brought on a new construct called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. Anybody here familiar with RAG, general construct? Okay. I'm not going to go too deeply, but I think it's worth us having the conversation about what RAG is. So understand the purpose it's serving. We have the initial model with its initial training corpus of data, and that's all it knows. RAG expands that amount of knowledge. So now I'm asking an LLM questions that could be coming from the training corpus or could be coming from this knowledge base of data. And it was populated much in the same way that the initial training corpus was. We took structured and unstructured content, we encoded it into vectors, so we turned words into math, essentially, with different encoding schemes and algorithms. Then the relevant vectors are provided to the LLM. So if I'm searching for, we're at Market Street Talent, if I'm asking about open positions, and we're using RAG to fill up the knowledge base of open positions, I ask for open positions. The relevant vectors, the data that's close to what I'm asking for, will be passed along to the LLM as part of my query. So it's taking the data with me and giving it to the LLM saying, answer my question. If you can't find it in your training corpus, look in this stuff. This stuff might have it. The LLM responds and says, hey, okay, I looked in the data you gave me, and now I've provided you with a response. So this is kind of cool. It's got some big limitations. So an LLM's knowledge is only as recent as the latest encoding, it's the latest training. And just, similarly, the RAG, the retrieval augmented generation, is only as updated as the last time you have scanned all of the documents that make it up, recalculated the embeddings, repopulated the vector database. So it's yesterday's news today, right? And you can pay a penalty if you want and try to keep it as fresh as possible, but it solves a problem. That problem is old data, legacy data. Really good for knowledge bases, really good for learning how to program, something that's pretty static, documentation that you want people to search through. But right now, you have the model doing all the work. I have passed even more data to the model. It has its training corpus. Here's a bunch of extra shit. Figure it out from all this. It's kind of the opposite of the microservice approach that our modern architectures look like. This is a monolith. This is a macro service, and I'm giving even more stuff to it. And, taking a step back, these LLMs, the big ones, the big box, Claude, GPT, even Quen, these are really freaking big models. And you're paying for all the CPU, all the compute, all the RAM needed to load these models and execute. You're paying for World Cup scores. You're paying for brownie recipes. You're paying for song lyrics. Those are all in the RAM that you're paying for in every inference. So the solution up to that point was throw more data, bigger vector databases, larger training corpuses. The Bs got larger. The 5 Bs were 7 Bs turned to 30 Bs. And we pass billions of additional tokens in with the hope of finding the right tokens that you give a shit. So this model started doing all the work, and the model providers were happy because this was spinning up a whole lot of CPUs. So we brought RAG onto the scene. We had chatbots. Chatbots could now speak to knowledge bases. The LLM was getting a little more powerful and a lot more relevant to the customer conversation. 2024 was the rise of the agent. Who's heard the word agentic? It's everywhere. I have customers who have kind of pivoted their entire marketing angle. They haven't changed their business, the same business, but all of a sudden the .ai suffix worked. And that's an interesting aside. If you know the island chain, it's not the Aleutians, I forget the island chains.
Oh, wow.
But it's the island chain that when they were doing the geo suffixes, .us, .uk, .eu, these guys got AI because they were the island chain. It's now their primary source of revenue, is selling AI domains to companies, to AI companies.
Is anyone else AI spawning out there? I got one called AI ALS.
Okay.
That one's gonna be a winner.
When it crashes, guys, when it crashes.
So agentic is everywhere. Everybody's talking about it, and the world's ready for the next big leap. It's not just chatbots. It's not just RAG. It's not just interfacing with an LLM. We needed behavior. So we evolved from the human to the LLM via the chatbot. ChatGPT's released. We expanded it to the human to the LLM plus RAG, plus that additional knowledge content. But now what if we needed to do more? We have shifted from this human to LLM interaction, and now we need that LLM to interact with other programmatic constructs. We need to have tools to access the data that we require and not just throw more data up onto the heap. So of course, agentic is the response. We're going to build agents. Agents are going to be the way that programmatic interactions with LLMs will happen, and programmatic actions from the LLM will happen. So to and from as well. Agentic, it showed up in the dictionary. It was not previously one, but it was added on behalf of all of these major companies. And we responded. So Amazon responded initially with some limited offerings, which were highly targeted and largely repackaging of disparate services while we were building our purpose-built agent platform. So Agent Core, has anybody heard of Agent Core? Anybody deployed anything on Agent Core? Okay. Maybe for a future meeting, everyone with a laptop could have an Agent Core agent deployed in 5 minutes, just to do it. And I can set up accounts. I can set up workshop accounts. It's easy to work with, and it has abstracted away a couple of the constructs that you're going to need. So runtime is sort of, it's table stakes at this point. From a runtime perspective, it takes a container. Okay, so in AWS, there's like 8 ways to run a container. Somebody give me a way to run a container in AWS. One service that can run a container. ECS, give me another one.
EC2.
EC2, but that's cheating because then you manage it yourself. But I'll give it to you. You can do it. Customer's doing it, so you get it. You get it. Anybody else?
Fargate,
Fargate, which is a ECS service. It's a serverless version of ECS.
Lambda,
Lambda can be a container, 100%.
Dang it.
Think older, think like even before Lambda. Elastic Beanstalk can run a container.
I just aged.
And then EKS. So the ECS, which is sort of the self-managed Docker Swarm mutant variant. And then we have EKS, which is the managed Kubernetes version. And, you know, opinions aside, these are the different ways in which you can deploy containers. Here is another way you could deploy containers. So Agent Core takes an agent as a container. And you can containerize, you can deploy an Agent Core. We're not awfully dogmatic about how you build that agent. So if you want what language you want to use, you're in a container, man. You're going to expose an HTTP endpoint. What is cool is that we offer memory. So I was joking earlier about my lack of short-term memory. It's intentional. What we have in Agent Core is short-term memory for the context of a conversation. And I overheard, yes, that you were talking about your wife making recipes and it learning, the LLM learning. That's an example of long-term memory. And we use short-term and then 3 different types of long-term memory. We can do preferences. This person prefers X, Y, or Z. We can do summaries of a conversation. This is the summary of the conversation. And then we can do sentiment analysis to say, okay, this person really likes fruit. This person has a strong aversion to frying pans. But it remembers these pieces of information, it persists it. So this is abstracted behind a framework. All you have to do is say, okay, I'm having a session with this person. I'm talking to this person. Store my short-term memory, boom. As long as you have that session ID, you can retrieve it. It has everything in the context. So that means you can have asynchronous communication and you're effectively stateless to the front end. Any front end can access that session ID's short-term memory within, off boundaries. We have long-term memory that gets collected after the fact. Long-term memory takes a little bit of time to settle. It's a batch operation that happens after the invocation, after your convo's over. It says, okay, what did I learn? Goes back through the conversation, starts storing out these things.
So just trying to make this real and tangible. Is this the short-term memory? I think most of us are familiar with the ChatGPT inventory.
It's the context window.
So when I have a chat over here where I'm talking about this thing, if I switch context, I usually go and I start a new chat.
Yep.
And try to do that. But I can go back to that old thread and keep going with that. Is
It's
that
exactly that.
short-term memory?
It's exactly that.
And then I don't know if folks towards the end of last year, there was a pretty popular trend going into these models and asking, based on everything I've asked you, what do you know about me? And it kind of starts to form this opinion about you. And is that more of that long-term memory?
That would be the sentiment. Yeah,
Sentiment?
that would be
Okay.
sentiment.
Right.
It might bleed into preferences if you expressly said that you had a preference. The summaries are just summaries of your conversations. In XML, For some reason, I'm sure there's an implementation detail that I don't know that there's a reason why you do it. But summaries come out in XML. Everybody else is just stored as JSON objects. So get your container up there. And again, we're not dogmatic about the implementation, but we've provided memory. We've also provided identity. Because one of the unique things about an agent is you're delegating for it to act on your behalf, which means that it needs to carry your identity with it for the duration of time that you have your session active. It needs to carry its own identity so it can cross whatever off boundaries, hit a database, call a Lambda, whatever it needs to do. But it also needs to know who you are, who it's acting on behalf of. So you don't get somebody else's resume, you don't get somebody else's recipes, you can't bleed across that boundary. So that's how we manage it through identity. I'll talk about gateway in a minute. And then the other big thing you're going to get is we've baked in observability and evaluations for your agents. So how many tokens were consumed in every conversation? Where were they from? How were they distributed? What kind of errors were thrown, if errors were thrown? It gives you a way to look at each version of your agent, how it's performing in the field, and collects all the relevant telemetry. That feeds in as an open telemetry spec observability framework, and it hits all the things you would expect it to see. So it's going to CloudWatch and it's going to CloudTrail. It's doing all the things you would normally see. Okay, so we talked about how we responded to agents. Now that we have a framework of how to run agents, let's take a look at what the agents need to be successful. So an agent is programmatic behavior coupled with an LLM for invocations. If you look at, whatever your favorite agent implementation is, mine, of course, is going to be Agent Core for the duration of this presentation. But that's going to be what, we'll have some sort of implementation. But what if I needed to do something? Am I going to code directly inside my agent and have it go and make invocations elsewhere? Or am I going to delegate that and be a microservice like the real modern world? So we will call that abstraction, where the agent needs to interface with an external component, a tool. I need a tool that can look up my email, my calendar in my email system. I need a tool that can create a service ticket for support. I need a tool to figure out what the weather is going to be tomorrow. And I need a tool to write a document or a summary. So this abstraction, this tool abstraction, was addressed. Tools can also be other agents. This delegates, this cascades through, so we can have nesting. So how do we handle tools? How are we going to respond to this need for an agent to have a tool? In November of 24, Anthropic released MCP. So a fellow graybeard, have you ever seen a protocol spec in a couple months be worldwide and dominate?
No.
This doesn't. Maybe, but that was when both of the people running networks adopted token ring. But no, it's crazy, because typically a protocol spec, I will fairly say that most, if not all, the people here are nerds. We're not that kind of nerd.
Yeah.
The standards people are a different nerd breed, right?
Birkenstocks.
And they will argue,
Cargo shorts.
and arguing over esoteric language, just the finest little points, the minutia. So to release a protocol to the field and have the entire world adopt it in a few months tells you that something's going on. This addressed a real need. And what MCP did was it gave us a standard for exposing tools to all of these LLMs, and it caught on. Everybody had to have some sort of MCP server. For AWS, you now have an MCP server for cost management. You have an MCP server for general infrastructure interactions. You have an MCP server which sits on your EKS clusters, so you can now communicate and introspect inside your clusters with an MCP server. The expectation is that everything you could do via CLI, everything you could do via API, you can do via an MCP server. That's how big the scope has become. So why? What does MCP provide that makes it so damn useful? It tells us three things. It tells us, where can I access the tool? What capabilities does the tool provide in natural language? And how do I speak to this tool, which is the MCP protocol, it's up for the model context protocol. So by getting the abstraction right, by getting these questions answered, it started to explode out there. Let's take a look at what a basic example of an MCP server is. This is using FastMCP. I'm going to make, and this is like the hello world from FastMCP. So I'm going to make something I call a calculator server. Now, if I ask you, what is an LLM good at? What is it really good at? It's not great at math. They're trying to get better. Anybody? Chat. Okay, so understanding what you meant and responding in kind. Picking something that makes sense to respond. So reasoning, we'll call it. Natural language is how you feed reasoning. So when I name this a calculator server, now with natural language processing, an LLM can say, this sounds like I'm doing some calculations. What do I have for tools? I'll get a calculator server. Okay. What does this tool, this MCP server expose? Well, I have a description here. It says I add two numbers together. I have another tool, multiply two numbers together. That's it. I've defined two tools with natural language. I haven't mentioned the positional parameters. I didn't even name the positional parameters. X, Y. It's not, I'm not doing the programmatic contract development that we've come to associate with interoperations between systems. I didn't have an open API spec, a Swagger spec. I didn't write, and again, Graybeard, I didn't write a fucking whistle, which I've done by hand to generate stubs that I could put in a jar so that another system could call me. That was old school, heavy, tight coupling.
I gotta shave my beard next meeting.
Yeah. This is tight coupling. Tight coupling is fragile. You push out a rev of the API and other people aren't aware of it, you broke the contract. You can't parse the response anymore. Boom, it blew up. No contract. Natural language. This is the major leap. And it's not idiot proof because nothing's idiot proof, but this is idiot resistant. So you can screw up. You can change the parameters and it's not going to matter because the LLMs can use natural language. It's going to figure it out. It's going to infer. I've got a couple of positional arguments. I've got two numbers. Yeah, we'll make it work. We'll stuff them in there. It's probably going to work. If that doesn't work, I'll reverse them, see if that works. The reasoning aspect, we'll figure it out. And this changes the game. We've changed the integration paradigm. We've changed the way that systems talk to each other. That's the big change. It's not that we had an LLM that could give us a brownie recipe. It's that now we can break free of the tight coupling of systems and use natural language with reasoning on both sides to get systems to talk to each other. Major shift. So we've moved away from the tight coupling, leveraged the strength of the LLM to reason, to figure out the how, and then the what. And we've natively embraced microservices. We did that because anybody can just announce what they do. I'm the MCP server that does calculations. It is the perfect microservices approach because it's not tightly coupled. So let's take a look at how old school function calling might have worked. If I was writing an app, this would be in like LangChain. So the old school, I say old school, 2.5 years ago, the before times, I would have it all in my app. I would write the function code to go locally and get a file off the file system, convert a PDF file to Markdown. So I would call this local function, it would execute, and it would return. I would have to be running the code in the place where the stuff was. If I'm accessing the file system, it'd have to run was in a place that has access to the file system, and it would have to be tightly coupled inside my app code. There's no discovery here. This was me hard coding. With an MCP server, I've delegated that function calling and said, hey, go figure it out. It spools up an MCP client. It looks at all the listed MCP servers, which will be sitting in the context. That's a whole other conversation. Maybe we'll have at the end here. It'll be sitting in the context when you talk to the LLM. These are the tools available to you. So remember when I talked about RAG and how we pass the whole additional knowledge base in? We're also pushing in all that description and those method descriptors from the MCP tools. Those are in the context, not the logic behind it, just the fact that they exist. So completely different integration pattern. And not everybody's going to want to rewrite all of their shit in MCP servers. It was pretty straightforward, as we saw with the fast MCP example. It's not hard. It's a couple annotations, really, and some natural language. But what if I am Amazon? What if I am insert customer? And I have 500 APIs, right? And they're heterogeneous and they're spread over humanity. But I want MCP servers because my executive heard the word agentic and now everything's got to be an MCP server. We provide an agent core gateway. So think of this like an API gateway analog, right? If you know the AWS API gateway, except if you have RESTful services with an open API schema, which if you have RESTful web services, they should be open API compliant. We can just create an MCP facade. You register the service with it. It will speak to it on the back end, but the front end is going to be an MCP server with all of the standard authentication stuff you get with an API gateway. So this gives you the layer of abstraction where you do not have to write the MCP server, keep your APIs where they are, throw a gateway in front of it. We've got a facade. Now you have access to all your APIs. Much less work.
Once that MCP is created, if I wanted to pull it out of Amazon, am I able to, or is that kind of hidden from me?
It would be hidden because there isn't an MCP server in that sense.
Okay.
It's just you're asking a master server about registered services underneath it.
Okay.
So yeah, it wouldn't be portable.
Not that I ever want to leave Amazon.
Your name has been logged. So we are aware of your thought crime, your transgression.
Alexa drones flying in.
Right. Okay, so if you don't have a bunch of well-spec'd APIs, you just have a bunch of Lambda functions that maybe publish their own HTTP interface. Same thing, snap them onto the back of it. It's a native interface. So with very little effort, you can have MCP servers available for all your stuff. And that's the benefit of API of Bedrock's Agent Core Gateway. Okay, so moving the timeline forward, all the way back almost an entire year, Google announced the A2A protocol. So the MCP protocol told agents how they can interact with tools, how they can do work and get data from external systems so that the LLM didn't have to have all that knowledge. A2A solves a different problem. A2A explains how an agent can find another agent. And I will say that it is the opposite flexibility level from MCP in that you are forced to have a card. Do I show an example card? No. So you actually have to expose a card which explains as an agent my capabilities. A little bit more hard-coded. There is a firm spec for it, but it has become the accepted way for agents to speak to each other. Via AWS Marketplace, you can deploy an agent which speaks A2A, which exposes an A2A card, A2A interface, or an MCP tool as a first-class citizen in Marketplace. If you have an MCP server that's really freaking cool, you can get it deployed in Marketplace after working through the partner ecosystem. It is a possible deployable first-class citizen artifact. Now, it came from Google. Like 2 months later, they open sourced it and they gave it to the Linux Foundation with the hope that it would catch on. Not quite the inferno of interest that MCP got, but it's wide enough that kind of everybody has adopted it. And it doesn't in any way replace what MCP does, because it doesn't address the access to tools. It doesn't address finding out what tools are available and how I do something. It's how one agent can delegate to another. And what's kind of cool about the spec and different from MCP is that A2A allows interruptible communication. So if you think about an agent that says, okay, I have, book me a flight to Miami, and it says, here are the available flights. What do you like? I've interrupted the flow of communication to the agent, right? That's transaction is complete, but it's waiting for user input. A2A supports communication with interruption. So I can say, okay, we're in the middle of a session. This agent has delegated, well, here are the flights. Which one do you want? Go back to the first agent. Okay, I think they like this one. Go back and book it. So A2A supports that bi-directional communication, holding a session open and allowing everybody to talk to each other. So again, solving a real problem that arose from the development of these agents. Okay, back to the timeline. So, yeah, October 15th. So we're now we're 5 months in, just over 5 months in. Anthropic introduced skills. So did we need another thing? Was there something that was obviously broken here? It wasn't obvious to me when it happened that we needed it or why we needed it. It sounded and smelled like, okay, and also ran, we need an extra thing. But it turns out it's probably more useful than an MCP server in many cases. So what an MCP did was it allowed you to externalize activity, externalize action, call something to schedule something on my calendar, to create a support ticket, to, you know, I don't know, to obtain information about flights. But there was nothing LLM-ish about that. And there was nothing that was inherently, you know, compartmentalized. It was an external thing that it was available for me to call. What about the things that I'm doing with my agent, with my LLM? The skills that I'm, or the activities, the routines that I am presenting. If I need to interface with my local file system, let's say that I need to convert a PDF file into Markdown, which I do an awful lot. Should I send every byte over the wire to an MCP server somewhere? First of all, we have concerns about privacy. Right now, whatever that PDF says better be acceptable to send over to this random MCP server. But that's much more of that's a task that an external server doesn't need to play. So what skills do is provide you a way to encapsulate that behavior, but keep it local. So a skill, by convention, by the Anthropic convention, sits in a directory, a folder that is known, convention over configuration, and it will scan through and figure out which skills are available by looking in these folders for a skill.md file, which has, this will feel like similar to the MCP example, it'll have a skill name and a description, when these are the natural language components that will end up in your context when you're talking to your LLM. Instructions won't, examples won't. That's telling the LLM what to do when you decide, but your skill name and description will sit in your context with the LLM. So it now knows about the existence of this as well as your MCP servers. Although most of the skills I've seen are just prompts. They're prompts that you reuse, they're prompts that were useful to you. They might even be prompts that were learned by the LLM and created for you as skills, saved out as skills. The skill becoming essentially long-term memory for routines that you go through. You actually can put executable artifacts in there. You can have inline Python execution. You can call Python from the file system. You can call bash scripts. You can encapsulate any behavior that can be run from the local file system. It doesn't have Python built in. You'd have to have Python, right? It assumes you have bash and not batch. I worked at Microsoft. I'm allowed to ding.
Where are they running? So
It's all local. So think of this as like shelling out.
Runs on your
Yeah. So think of it as like a shell out to the local environment. So this is real. Like this solves a problem. It fills one of the gaps, which is, what about programmatic interactions that maybe don't require a server and aren't externalized and I can't send stuff to? And how do I reuse things that I have developed along the path?
We use it to a lot of the skills that we develop. Pushes our brand down, or our standard architecture documentation, heading down on the output.
Yep.
So we're not chewing up context. We'll
Yep.
back up to the LLM.
Yep.
Same way mermaid diagrams too, right? Formatting and all that crazy stuff.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So let's add skills in to the mix with the agent. So we talked about how native function calling worked, how MCP style integrations worked over to the MCP client. Skills is just another way, another discoverable way for the LLM to interact programmatically with its environment. In this case, it happens to be the local environment. In the case of MCP, you keep the name of the function of the server and the name of the methods and the natural language description of the methods. With skills, you keep that name and that description. All that sits in the context with the LLM. None of the functionality does. So it doesn't matter how long your skill is. It's just going to load in what it needs. It keeps in memory only what's necessary to locate stuff. Okay. I'm not going to get on the soapbox. Okay, I'm getting on the soapbox. If I see another VS Code wrapped AI. Okay. So for those around long enough, you remember previous code, right? You may even remember Emacs and VI, right? But what has happened because it got open source? Actually, no, this is what the older folks remember. Eclipse would be the example.
Yeah.
So there were the closed source IDEs like IntelliJ, and I had an IntelliJ license until like 2 years ago. And then there were the open source Eclipse variants. And because it was open source, it allowed everybody on the planet who had a slightly different use case to bundle Eclipse up with a bunch of plugins and a bunch of documentation a new skin and call it, here's my IDE. Well, it's happening again. So VS Code, everybody use VS Code? VS Code, VS Code, okay. Everybody uses VS Code. It's open source. It's got everything you need. Fantastic extensions framework, native MCP support. What's happening now in the market is that people are embedding all of their default extensions, a bundled set of MCP servers, pre-built set of skills and prompts, and they're calling it an IDE. Some folks call it, we call ours Kiro, which I'm going to show and demo after this. Kiro is pretty freaking cool. I use Kiro on the daily at work, and then I use Claude Code at home in VS Code. If you use Cursor, VS Code, Codex, anybody? VS Code. Okay, so it's all just wrappers around it. But what's happening here is we're bringing the LLM into where the developer lives and operates. And it's changing things a little bit. So Copilot really started this, and they would get credit. They should get credit. I probably should put them in this. Maybe I will. They sort of started it. The idea that there would be, but it's like Clippy for programmers. So that's the only reason I don't want to. It's the only reason I don't want to give it the credit. But
miss me?
Yeah. I've never disabled a feature faster in my life than I did with Clippy. But it was like that. I think we've reached a happy medium now where the tightly integrated AI is part of the development experience. And when I show you Kiro, you'll get a feel for what that's like. But this is the next big change. All of these constructs we talked about, agents, MCP, skills, are coming together in our developer environments. And this is how we interact with the world. I use a number of MCP servers every single day, tons of skills every day. It has changed the way that we do business. And along with that came a change in the way we think about software development. And this is actually pretty big. And I'm not taking up too much time. I'd be willing to give like a whole other presentation or a mini presentation about this tonight. Spec-driven development and what we call internally at AWS AI DLC or AI software development lifecycle is a significant departure from what we have done with software before. And this is where the puck is going. If you're not there yet, you need to be skating toward this inevitability. So back in the day, there were punch cards. Not you, not you.
They can hide that.
But there were punch cards. Back when you were born, when I was born, there were punch cards.
71, brother. Great year.
75. So magnetic tape, I guess. I graduated to magnetic tape. But we were telling the computer what to do with its ones and zeros, right? We bubbled up one step with the release of assembly language. That's how this is now with an x86 processor. These are the set of instructions I'm going to give it. I abstracted away the ones and zeros. Now I had a language I could speak to it. 72, Dennis Ritchie came out with C. The book's like that thick. It's like nothing, and yet it's the language that the entire freaking world still runs on at the lowest level. But he abstracted away assembly language. And now we had constructs, not a string for some reason, a var char pointer. Anyway, we changed the level of abstraction. And now we could write a program. We had to do memory management, but we didn't have to do assembly line instructions. We weren't necessarily pushing and poking at parts of the memory stack. And then we started to build interpreters in C. So like Java is built on a virtual machine. You would compile Java bytecode, but Java bytecode wasn't C. It was interpreted by the Java virtual machine that was written in C that then spoke assembly language to talk to the compiler, which got binary instructions. We're bubbling up the stack. Then we got to the interpreted languages like Python. Python doesn't get compiled. Python gets interpreted by an interpreter, which is compiled, which speaks to C, which speaks to assembly, which speaks in the compute on the CPU. You're seeing us bubbling up the stack. And in each one of these, we gave something up, but we got something better. And you could always still go to the bottom of the stack if you want to. Microcontroller people still go all the way down to the CPU or MCU. But you don't care about ones and zeros anymore. And you probably don't read the assembly language instructions, which are generated from the binaries that are generated from your interpreted code. And you don't look at the C code for the interpreter, and you don't read the class file that your javac command generated. Because you don't care, because that's not the magic. Uncomfortable truth time. Semicolons and curly braces ain't magic either. If you have led yourself or the world has led us to believe that the semicolons and the curly braces are magic, you're going to have an uncomfortable couple of years. Because just as we have bubbled up the abstraction layer, we're bubbling up again. Because an LLM can sling curly braces and semicolons way faster than you can. And it's seen it all because it scraped it, maybe illegally, from Stack Overflow on the web. It had access to all these code repositories. Right. And you might even have your GitHub repo tied in to your local LLM. There might be an MCP tool that exposes your GitHub repo. Semicolons and curly braces are no longer magical. What's magical is intent, the thing you were trying to build in the first place. And you had to speak the esoteric ones and zeros, the esoteric assembly language, the esoteric C, Java, Python, TypeScript, which I actually find pretty cool. And now we're going to abstract one level further away so that the code is an artifact of your process, and it's not your process. It's not your work product. It's the result, just like compiled bytecode was the result before. We're bubbling up one. And spec-driven development is one view of that world. I'm going to show that in my demo, so we don't have to go much more deep into that. So I posted the same picture on LinkedIn. Anybody know what I generated it with? There are clues.
Nano banana.
Nano banana too. And because I'm not doing this for money, I can use it. I've not violated the commercial clause. Okay, so who here loves Markdown? Who here wanted your programming language to go away and be replaced with freaking Markdown? Not me. Okay, so I mean, I've been on Reddit for 16 years now. So I learned Markdown making snarky replies to people. But now I feel like I'm in a world of Markdown because the LLMs and all the AI tool providers have decided that Markdown is lingua franca. This is what we're going to be living in.
Markdown is our new PDF.
Markdown is the new PDF, 100%. This is the intermediate document format in which everybody is going to speak. If you don't already have a Markdown viewer installed in your one of million VS Code variants, get it, get a mermaid diagram viewer. This is where the world's going. So we will embrace this. It is hierarchical and your IDs can already handle Markdown pretty well, but you will get Markdown fatigue. I generated this, I think it was 2 nights ago. It was like 11 o'clock. I flipped back from Markdown to my Python code because I just wanted to see a closing statement. I wanted to see an end curly brace, a semicolon, just terminate something instead of an endless list of Markdown related content. So anyway, this came out of frustration, but we have to learn a new way to work, right? So Markdown is how we interface with LLMs. It understands Markdown, it writes Markdown, it's hierarchical, and it was meant for documentation, so it's pretty human readable form. Okay, the timeline, this is the last stop on the timeline. So in November, Moltbot, so first it was Claudebot, and then it was Moltbot, and then it was OpenClaw, were released and renamed in quick succession. Anybody used OpenClaw so far? I will not. How much money's left in your bank account afterwards? So it's really cool. So it came out of Claudebot. So it came out of Claude, right? It came out of LLM. And just as we talked about the IDE, the AI-powered IDE, it came and met us. AI met us where we were. That's what's happening with OpenClaw. It's meeting us where we live on our laptop, on our desktop. It's meeting us on our phones. It becomes a personal assistant that can execute automated tasks on your behalf to the extent that you're willing to allow it. It's exciting. I'd love to be able to say, go do this. I'm still waiting, like, who's old enough to have seen an episode of the Jetsons? Who's still washing your own dishes? What the fuck happened? I thought we had a contract, right? I'd get flying cars and somebody'd wash the dishes. I'm still in traffic. We got stuck behind an accident for 32 minutes. and tomorrow I'm gonna wash dishes. So anyway, we're evolving in some ways, but not the promised ways. This would be an assistant that does work for you, where I can say, go schedule this, go do this, go visit this website, like all my friends on Instagram, like every picture except hers, go through that process on my behalf. Now, the challenge is it's a terrifying level of access. It's running as you. It is you. Programmatically, it's you. It's sitting on a device with the exception of possibly having a 2FA, like have it text you a code, to your phone number. You can just go do whatever. It's just programmatic. As much as you like to think when that browser spools up that something magical has happened, you're being shown a set of pixels and you're clicking on an X and Y coordinate grid. That's all that's happening. It doesn't need a human and it doesn't need a mouse to perform the signal that I hit this X and Y on this coordinate grid, right? Easily programmatic. So terrifying, and I wish you folks well.
And if you want to present on your experiences with it, we are open to future presentations.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've been using it, but wisely in sandboxed environments.
Yes, because I got like super hidden one information type, and it's all jumping and dancing around. It worked amazing.
Yeah.
I do automation every single part of every task. If it's possible to automate, that does. That's all.
With natural language.
Yes, with
Right.
any type.
Yeah.
Literally any.
Yeah.
It feels like, if it's like newborn baby, got passport, got open account, and it grows.
It learns.
He learn content, collect, and in the end, you got very person.
Yeah.
Agent, like in 10 years, it be same as you.
Right. Terrifying and exciting at the same time.
And it will be
There's
Yeah.
it anyway, because it's logical end of automation.
Right.
Peter Yang, product manager for Roblox. He has a good series on YouTube. There's a gentleman on there that literally built a business that runs 7x24. He gave it Vercel access. He gave it Bitcoin. No, and he said, "Listen, hey, I'll be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
I'm going to prove it. We're only going to get better when this thing fails." And it's out there making $3 to $6 grand a week or something like that.
That's crazy.
Will he? And he goes, "Listen, I started off with zero. So if I go back to zero, that's okay."
How can you lose what you never had?
Yeah.
Okay. So terrifying. So a couple of takeaways.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't understand how this spec-driven development actually differs from does it generate the whole everything like that?
Yeah. If you hold on for a minute, I'm going to go demo that.
Okay.
Yeah, and hopefully the questions will be answered then. Okay, so we do have OpenClaw instances available in Lightsail on AWS. So if you want a sandboxed version that can't access anything you don't give it access to, you can go mess around and spool up your own OpenClaw. So worth mentioning.
Demo approved? Okay, good.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
What's the difference between doing this and then I fired up OpenClaw on EC2 instance?
It'd be the same.
The same deal?
It'd be the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be the same. This is just sort of like ephemeral, right? So this is just lighter weight. You don't have to manage it. But Lightsail is essentially like a temporary desktop environment, well, a temporary lightweight environment. But you could do it just easily in EC2. Just mind your security groups and monitor egress. Okay.
What is
So-
the use of Cloudsail here? Sorry, I forgot actually.
Sorry.
How the Cloudsail is useful?
Cloud sale or light sale?
Yeah, Lightsail. Sorry.
Right, so light sales, I think you just kind of said like a lightweight desktop environment. So, it's a virtual machine that like in EC2, you kind of have to have a little bit of AWS knowledge. You have to be aware of security groups, this, that, and the other. I think light sale, from my perspective, abstracts a little bit of that and just lowers the barrier of entry to a functioning desktop environment that you can hop into.
Right. So like if you look at the other examples here, like WordPress sites, they're like pre-canned images with pre-installed software. Whereas EC2, you'd start it up and it's just EC2, it's an AMI. There might be something on the AMI depending on the vendor you picked. But this is much more like an application, lightweight application deployment. You can
Oh,
still get to the desktop though.
okay. It has some IDs, specific language IDs, directly we can.
No, you would have to add that, but you can get console access.
Okay.
Okay, so do a summary to the deck, and then I'll hop over to the spec-driven development demo. So despite that timeline having like 15 points on it, it's still early days. We're only a couple years into this. Things will get better, worse, more terrifying, hopefully less terrifying, but it's still early days, right? MCP, remember, MCP bridges the gap between agents and tools. Skills bridge the gap between agents and local capabilities. Somebody else owns it, it's an MCP. I own it, it's a skill. When I'm automating things on my own desktop, generally going to be a skill. A2A bridges the gap between agents. So those are your three main constructs that have been introduced here. Personal assistants and AI-enabled IDEs are now the products that are ending up in your hands that are integrating all these functions. In back-end systems, there's a whole lot of stuff that's happening now. I'm hopefully giving a talk at a customers conference in May, talking about the dashboardless future for BI. We're changing the way we consume information. So I see a puzzled look.
I'm just imagining what that world is. So it's natural. Instead of having a dashboard where I see information someone else deems relevant for me to be digesting, I can now ask it questions.
You nailed it. You nailed it. In that dashboard, you'll only see whatever the query produced.
Yes.
That mostly static query with some filters to substitute out query parameters. As opposed to asking a question to something that has access to all of the data. It might surface something that wouldn't be on the dashboard. Or maybe they didn't create a filter. Has anybody had to write the back end like filter processing logic for queries for a dashboard? It generally sucked. Dates. Time zones. The worst. It's insane, even if you agree upon a date format. So it makes the big leap from that giant pain in the ass, aggregation. Think of all the data lake and data warehouse work that you did, the ETL work you did to get it sitting in the same data lake so that you could have a static dashboard give you what you think you need to know. You can ask a question of that same data. And if the data doesn't live in the same place, tool for each place. Ask the question, distribute the query, aggregate back. No ETL pipeline. It's cheaper, easier, and it scales better. That's the future I'm going to be presenting on. And that's extending this assistance ID. It's AI meeting us where we are and then changing it, disrupting the paradigm. So it's coming. And then the last thing, I say this all the time, I see it at our user groups in Boston. Paradigms are changing, and that's a good thing. It'll be uncomfortable. Let it be uncomfortable, but you're here. You're talking about it. That's the right response. The wrong response is pretending it's not changing or hoping that you're old enough to wait until you retire, still doing the same old thing that you were doing. You're changing because you're hearing about it, and it'll change the way you think. Be curious, experiment, touch a whole bunch of stuff, write way more code than you need, throw away most of the code that you write, because the muscle memory of doing it is what makes you better. Right? It's not necessarily pushing things to production. Plus, my pager's never gone off for code I've never deployed. So 100% success rate. Okay, before I do the spec-driven development demo, any questions on the presentation, which represents only my personal views?
I have a question. Thank you so much, Kevin, for the nice presentation. I think I want to point out a question related to SQL. So you mentioned that it's actually to link between, I think it's okay. I think it's just about the summary. You said it links between the agents and the local
execution. Yeah.
And it runs locally.
It can run locally. It will be interpreted locally, but it can do whatever you do from the skill. So if this skill were to say, go do something remotely, you can execute remotely.
Like if you want to do a GitHub action out of it?
Yeah, shell out and run a GitHub action.
Yeah.
Think of it as shelling out is the easiest way to think about it. A skill is a prompt and the ability to shell out and execute other assets, which could go remotely or stay locally, but any execution will be locally. So I looked on Claude, although they're pre-built skills, they're downloaded. They're not pre-built and hosted. They're still executing locally. If you're remote, generally it's an MCP server.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts?
Good stuff, man. Appreciate you.
My pleasure. Okay, so now let's get nerdier. How are we doing on time?
Kelsey, when are you taking us out?
You're good.
All right.
She starts flicking the lights real quick.
Don't care where you go, but you can't stay there.
Start singing, it's closing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just create a let me close folder here.
Thoughts about your concern, but we can talk about it later.
Okay. All right.
You have a concern?
Just
Would you
the
like to share with the group?
just the question about dashboards going away. But we can, yeah, consider that for later.
So as I'm getting this set up here, explain the concerns.
I mean, one of the things that I think about with that is versioning, shareability, and kind of concept of everyone seeing the same thing. And I'm imagining a future where, you know, you ask a query, hey, I'm running these different marketing campaigns, which ones should I cut? And this is from like an example. I did a Snowflake workshop a few weeks ago. And where does that artifact go? Is that like you know, you just share a link to it, it's in a chat, it's the
Right.
context, like how do we kind of think about that?
I mean, if I had an insight, I would ask it to create a diagram.
Mhm.
Now, you can create images from many of these frameworks. But we seem to have agreed that it's either mermaid diagrams or ASCII ERDs.
So this is almost counterintuitive, so follow me for a second. Some of the work I may or may not be involved with since we're recording. Looking to create a static web page output and then host that. Now, issue, right? Because it's bitten me in other lives. That's a read-only piece of content.
Right.
And it's gonna rot as soon as you put it out there. So you need to put like a time to live or an expiry notice on it. Or
Right.
something of that nature, but that's some of the work I've done. That's the way to get around it.
Right.
Yeah.
In that regards.
One of my concerns, and maybe it's not a valid concern, but like we all know, like, you know, ChatGPT, all of these like hallucinations. And
Right.
like one of the things I know when I build a dashboard and I show a widget is I vetted that data.
Right.
I know that this query is delivering the piece
Right.
of information and it is factual. And that's what I'm presenting to my users.
Yeah.
My biggest concern is what happens if someone gets something that isn't truthful or and that's where my initial
Right.
concern went.
100% valid. The question of determinism in all of this, because it's not intelligence, it's next token prediction.
So a way that I've seen friends of mine, and we've done some stuff as well, write a red team agent.
Okay.
To basically saying, I'm gonna get fired, so tear this thing apart, show me my holes, so you can get a better confidence score.
Right.
Around that. So it's because again, like you know that validation. Now we're like 1 or 2 steps removed from it. Well, now I need to think almost adversarial, right?
Right.
And write an agent that would take that data and then try to poke as many holes into it as you can. I even do that on some of the content I send internally to some of key executives going, hey, I created this, red team it because I know this guy's gonna pull it apart anyways.
Right. So there's an awful lot of wisdom in that. The other is that you change the sources of data to say only use numbers that come from this MCP tool, which backed by a SQL server. So you know what the query is.
It's backed by a SQL server. How'd you get rid of my ETL?
I would have asked an MCP server that's co-resident.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying no to data lakes in general. And one of my customers does happen to run the biggest managed Trino environment in the world. Starburst Data, shameless plug. Trino answers that question. It's a distributed federated query system based on, it's a fork of Presto that was developed by Meta. Although I think they're Facebook when they developed. But the idea of distributing it out so that you don't have to bring everything into one place. Yeah. And but you're right. So it's a lack of determinism. And when you do the challenge, the gut check agent, remember it's all next token guessing, right? So it's guessing based on vector distance and vector proximity and vector similarity. It's all floating point math. So it never really knows. It's just guessing what is proximate, what mathematically seems to filter out. What the gut check agent does, the validation or the reasoning agent, lets you go back and start the path again. So if there was a fork it took, the hallucination is just it picked a wrong branch on the next token prediction. You'll see it with Claude, you'll see it with GPT even more, where it's like, oh, you're right, let me back up. And so now it's walking back the tokens it predicted, and it's trying another path. So it's using the same vector similarity, but it's choosing different paths, different branches. So it's absolutely a problem. Determinism, a lack of determinism is absolutely a problem. I've seen some utter nonsense, and it's up to us to write the tests, to write the gut check agents, and to write the tools that constrain it. But yeah, that the whole thing feels a little bit squishy, and I 100% agree. It'll get better, it only gets better, but it's a little bit squishy.
Context too, right? So you're trying to, so some of these models, right, million tokens or something like that, no way in hell would I even put anything close to that, right? Maybe half, maybe a third at the most, and then use techniques to minimize that context even more. That's how you drive more let's say reliable, deterministic outputs as well.
Yeah, purge that context as often as you can.
I've seen in some of the stuff that I've done, even just text-based stuff, it's like, it was like a drunk baby with a PhD, you know?
Well, and some of it's intentional compaction, but it's compaction of the context window. Okay, so non-determinism aside, or not aside.
I have one question. Sorry, I'm very new into this. Yeah, how is vibe coding different than SDD?
Okay, perfect. So thank you for setting up my next talk. Okay, so this is Kirill, first of all. What? Did I stop sharing?
You did stop sharing.
I have a problem with sharing.
It started when you were kids.
Starting when I was a kid. I had an older brother, so sharing was a unidirectional activity. Okay.
That's a pretty good handle on this. So.
Right. It's a lesson that's important to learn. So this is Kirill. So this is our repackaged VS Code environment with our prompts and our extensions. It is the little ghost you will see. You don't see the little ghost outside of Kiro. Here's VS Code loaded up with Claude code. This is the world we live in. You can see it very similar. You'll know VS Code when you see it. So if you try any of the augment, cursor, if you try any of them out there, you're going to say, oh, this is VS Code. So this is ours. Now we've bundled in a few things here. And one of the big distinctions is the question that was just asked, the difference between vibe coding and spec coding. So with vibe coding, I am sort of seat of the pants. I suppose I can just create different folders, right? So let's build, let's use the use case that was in my slide deck. Let's build an MCP server which can perform calculations. Okay. This is me starting right with the thing I want to build. Let's go build this thing. It's quickly creating exactly what I've asked for, which is called calculator server.py. We can see in the content streaming in. So almost all LLMs, no matter how much you tell them to be concise, they always, maybe it's because you're paying by the token, but they always write way too much freaking code, like way too much freaking code. Hopefully that's something that's going to change quickly. But this was vibe coding. I came up with an idea. I said, hey, I'd like this to exist. It created me a nice Python file. It shows mcp.server. I don't know who MCP is. I don't know who that provider is. Yeah, I don't know who that is. So, but it picked this MCP library that it wanted me to use. And it just quickly, in this vibe mode, it just quickly jumped right to the solution, established what my dependencies were going to be, and created a quick README for it to execute. And if I wanted to go and actually test it, I could make myself a virtual environment. I could execute this locally and get it to run. What happened was I had an idea. I wrote some code. That's vibe coding. And I can ask it to make changes, reverse the order of parameters in every method. So I can make suggestions for it to make tweaks and tune the code. That's vibe coding. That's like the assistant coding. I'm asking something to help me with these discrete tasks. I'm taking little pieces of work and I'm handing it over.
Yeah, I got it. And
Okay,
SDD will go with first documentation, and as
yes,
documentation will go for code gen.
100%, 100%. So hold on. Let me make dir throw away 2. Okay, and then I will switch over to spectrum development so you can see what that feels like. So here, again, it made a bunch of edits to the file. That's the life that we tend to live in with vibe coding. When we switch over, close folder, and I'll open folder, I'll go to my new one. Okay, when we do vibe coding, I trust the authors. The author is me. No. I gotta get to the corner without it. Okay. So when I go to spec coding, it's going to take, to your point, a completely different approach. I get an angry warning when I start up because I have 55 MCP servers. I don't need them. I need fewer, but that's just sort of the world that I'm living in. Okay. So with vibe coding, let's ask the exact same question. Let's create an MCP server which performs calculations. So hopefully it's live demo. I didn't prepare this in any way. The very first thing that's different is it doesn't assume that I wanted to do what I said. It assumes that I've got a goal in mind, and it starts to interrogate me. It's like, wait a minute. You're building something, or you're fixing a problem. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and build a feature. And then let me get up here to to explore. Okay. This is recommended. Okay. I thought I clicked on it. I thought I clicked on you.
Before the
Submit
spec
submit
approach, were people like I always vibe coded with ask me any clarifying questions that will help you be more successful in this task.
Right.
And I would get kind of back and forth. Is that kind of like a predecessor to something like this, or I can just
Yes, that was clarifying your intent, but yes.
Yeah.
The big difference here, and actually I'm gonna pull a Julia Childs here, and I'm gonna skip to an already baked turkey. You see that it's creating a requirements markdown file. So this is the world that I live in, and this is why I had the guy with the ghosts of MD files flying around his head, because it's going to create a bunch. If I go to the turkey that's already cooked, and this is part of our, it's part of a framework we call the AI DLC, the AI software driven lifecycle. We will actually go through in the spec-driven development process and create a requirements document and a requirements verification document. So here were the requirements, and here were the questions that I asked you to clarify, and here are the answers that you gave me that drove the decision making that resulted in this markdown file. And then when we've agreed together, the LLM and myself, that this is okay, it will go through and say, okay, I'm going to then take those requirements, I'm going to craft a plan for what we're going to build to meet these requirements. Then it's going to show me the plan. Here's my execution plan. And now I'm going to approve the execution plan, and any of the conversations that went along the way, it's going to say, okay, this is what you said when in a clarifying response. Then it's going to break out units of work, and it's going to create user stories so we understand what the user's experience will be. All of this in Markdown. And at the end of this, I'm going to be provided with a set of tasks. I don't know where the tasks MD is in this guy. All right, let's see here. I may actually not have gone to it because I think I boarded this one in mid-demo. But it will create a tasks markdown file, and I'm going to execute these tasks independently. I can say go execute them and have no human in the loop and have no skin in the game, and who knows what will be built. But otherwise, I'm going to go through each task. Some will shell out and run Python. Some will shell out and run PyTest. Some will shell out and be batch scripts and set up environment variables. Some will create infrastructure as code. I'll run Terraform apply for my local environment. But it's a completely process focused because I didn't mention code yet. I might not see the code in spec-driven development. If I don't get the behavior that I want, I alter a spec. I don't change the code that implemented the spec. Why would I do that? That's an artifact. I don't change the bytecode of my Java class. I don't change the assembly code of my C file. I guess the C wouldn't have generated it, right? .o, whatever. But it's not the code that mattered. It was the intention. So I'm editing the intention and it's generating the code. Code generation has become almost ephemeral. Like the bytecode is. We do this not only in this process, but you can do it in Agent Core. If there's a problem it can't solve, you can have it just generate ephemeral code to solve the problem. I actually get that from Claude Code. Claude Code will create a Python script locally just to execute it ephemerally to get whatever I need to get done. It'll execute it and then throw the code away. That's where we're headed. That's where the puck is going. So the big takeaway I want folks to have is if you're still thinking 2 years from now that you're going to have the best semicolons and curly braces, and that's going to be your differentiator, you're not going to do better than Claude Code. What you'll do better is have intention, is understand why you were writing it, why the function should be designed that way, why you wanted this enterprise architecture pattern, why it should be a flywheel, why it should be a factory. You choose the patterns and understand the architecture. The code itself is just the artifact generated from your intent, just like the bytecode, just like the assembly and the C. So that's where the puck is going. I don't control the puck, but know that this is where it's headed. So for spec-driven development, I've become a bit of a markdown wrangler, for good or for ill. And like I said, they generally look good for the most part. I think, I hate when my tabs get misaligned here. But yeah, so at least in Markdown, you see the Markdown view, it stacks the hierarchy fairly nicely. But actually, when I posted this on LinkedIn, I had just gotten to the point where I'm like, I can't read more Markdown. Give me something quantifiable. Give me something that compiles. So it takes a bit for me to get used to it, but I understand this is where it's going. And there may be an editor, an IDE that, because this is still an IDE optimized for curly braces and semicolons. It's still optimized for the thing that we used to think was important. I think we'll get to a point where it's now optimized around the Markdown and understanding the intermediately generated artifacts and understanding how we control those artifacts. Any questions? Fear? Anybody have a sense of fear?
Don't be mad.
But you're talking about it.
I was in your same shoe going, touching my gray hair going.
Right.
Can I
I'm gonna run out the clock.
Yeah.
No, but I had to dive right in, man.
Yeah.
You got it.
You got it.
Yes.
So we run this session called AI DLC, right? This is our framework, but you can use anything. The goal is not a product. We don't sell it. It's off a Git repo. You can go download it and walk through it. It's just a set of prompts and markdown files to track and audit your decision making. The loudest person in the room, we usually get, 6 to 15 developers and a couple business people in a room, and we do this discussion. And everybody has exactly that reaction. It's like, they won't outright call it bullshit, but that's kind of what the feeling is. There's no way you're not going to replace my magical semicolons. But what happens is those loudest voices on day 1 are the loudest voices on day 3 in the other direction. They're like, oh, I get it. Because we're rolling out a whole feature in a day and a half. And when it didn't work, we went in and fixed it. And if I have to fix a line of code, I fixed a line of code. But I didn't have to fix 80 lines of code. And in many cases, people who've worked with large code bases would know this, sometimes throwing that shit away is the best thing you could possibly do. Trying to keep putting lipstick on that pig and hoping that you get one bug fix that doesn't create 3 more bugs, it's painful. Now, because the code itself is ephemeral, or not ephemeral, but it's generated artifact of the decision-making process, I can just say, okay, just regenerate it. Just change the intent and regenerate it. And the other thing, again, for those who are in legacy code bases, it might even not have to be large code bases, you don't know what's going on. Like you could sit there and you could put breakpoints in and you can look at the stack, but unless you're hopping and stepping over line for line, and even then you'll know what method it enters and you'll know what it returned from that method. You may have no idea why that happened. No idea what the intent of the developer was when they wrote it. Now the intent is encoded, the intent is stored, the intent is auditable and replayable. It's a different world. You're actually more powerful now. It's just that what you're generating is a different thing.
It's gonna make you think, oh, I don't know.
100%. This is more democratization than it is replacement.
The barrier now, gentleman, Rich Mulholland, another good one on YouTube you can watch. He just released one today. The distance now between creativity is effort. anyone can do this now, right?
Right.
So it's how good is your idea? And how much effort do you really want to put into this? Can you out-hustle someone?
Right.
Versus back in the day, right? It was infrastructure, it was skill. A giraffe, 2 dogs, and a case of beer over a weekend, man.
Enterprise
We're starting a new
guys,
company.
entrepreneur guys. Oh, I can do this business, that business, and they just know how to use cloud code.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It might not be great. It might not scale.
Yeah.
It probably isn't secure. All those roles still matter.
Yes.
All those people are still needed. The ops team, the DevOps team, the security team may be needed more now than they ever were before. There's one parting thing I will leave you with. I didn't generate, well, I thought I had Python. It was in the other directory, wasn't it? So I generated a Python file in this throwaway project, right? You saw me generate the calculator file. Okay. And I looked here and I said, I don't know what this is. This is a set of dependencies. I mean, has everybody here seen Python? Right? This is performing folder level resolution inside wherever the dependency directory is. I assume everybody's using the Pi virtual environment. If not, UV, like I need to convert over to UV. But a VNV, a virtual environment, this is just a folder resolution path. I have no idea what MCP.server is. I knew fast MCP that was in my example. So one thing that people are doing, it can guess, the LLM can guess incorrectly, and sometimes it makes shit up. And it gives an import from a folder that doesn't exist for a package that doesn't exist. Because when it looked at similar tokens, that's kind of what it smelled like.
Mm-hmm.
So the process, anybody know what the process of creating malicious fake packages is? It is called slop squatting.
Yeah.
So the practice of slop squatting is guessing what an LLM might put out as a bogus dependency, creating that dependency and uploading it to a pip repository, a public one, so that you now can get malicious code into somebody's environment because they didn't validate their dependencies.
We had one instance where, and a senior guy, but just forgot to put the controls around which part of the file system. So he kicked off a job, and the job would typically only take 15, 20 minutes. He comes back an hour later. You do put a constraint around that. Well, the LLM found all the packages and said, oh, well, I know there's a security issue with NPM. I know this, that, and it went out and started to pull it down.
Oh, IT's calling, you've downloaded 2 terabytes of dependencies. Yeah, so I mean, it's an exciting world, but it's also a little scary. But know that, again, this is where the puck is going. And for the big coarse-grained abstractions, Amazon's got an answer. Like everybody's sort of got their own, flavor of answer. But we've kind of ticked all the boxes, which is what we would tend to do. We tend to address all the features. We're a breadth provider. Others might go deeper in narrower places. But we tend to be, let's check all the boxes and make sure you've got everything you need.
Well, as a multi-cloud guy, man, you guys have come a long way in the last 6 to 7 months, man.
On the agent side? Oh yeah, I don't know if you tried original Bedrock agents. Yeah, that was not a viable, not a viable bridge. One of the longest forms I've ever filled out that wasn't tax related was creating my first Bedrock agent. Right? It was insane. Okay, so thanks everybody.